Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Whitehouse.
May I interject for one moment to ask that the report that we put together, Captured Courts, the Republican Judicial Assault on Reproductive Rights, be entered into the record of the hearing?
Without objection.
Thank you.
Senator Hirono. It's not on. Try it now.
Okay, I think it's on now.
Yes.
Thank you. So I want to start with something that the Mississippi Attorney General Lynn Fitch said, because the Supreme Court is going to be hearing the Mississippi case. But the Mississippi Attorney General recently claimed that overturning Roe v. Wade would somehow empower women to pursue careers and raise children. I wanted to see if Ms. Ross Gosgrave, Representative Howard, whether either of you have any comments about that kind of statement, that women will somehow be empowered if Roe v. Wade were overturned.
So today, women are empowered to participate in the economy. I think overturning Roe v. Wade would have the opposite effect of diminishing their ability to work when they want to work, to space their children when they want to space their children. But if there's interest in furthering women's participation in the workforce, there are a range of policies that actually do that, like childcare, for example.
Representative Howard, do you have anything to add?
I would agree with what was just said. The fact is that, as I said in my opening, I came of age before Roe v. Wade, and I'm well aware of the obstacles that women had in making educational and employment choices for themselves if they found themselves pregnant and did not have many options other than to carry that pregnancy to term. It prevented them from their very destinies.
Well, she goes on to say that women will be more empowered because there are numerous laws enacted since Roe addressing pregnancy discrimination, requiring leave time, assisting with child care, and more. I would be really surprised, frankly, if Mississippi provided any of those kinds of programs or protections. For Professor Vladeck, what effects do late-night, unsigned, terse rulings like the one the Supreme Court issued in the Texas case have on judicial transparency and accountability, and how does this affect litigants' strategies and reliance on prior court decisions?
It's a fair question, Senator, and I think the tricky part is we don't know. So we have rulings that the Supreme Court hands down that have no majority opinion. I cite a couple of them in my testimony, and then lower courts read them one way or the other, and the Supreme Court chastises the lower courts that they think read the unexplained ruling wrong. And so I think that's, it's, again, just to sort of respond a bit to Senators Lee and Cruz, the shadow docket is not new, the emergency docket is not new. What is new is how much more the court is doing with it and how much it's expecting Senator, parties, lower courts, all of us to understand what these cryptic rulings mean.
Have you done a sort of an analysis of the kind of decisions that the Supreme Court is making using the shadow docket process? Well, it's not even a process.
Yeah, I mean, I realize that my written statement's pretty long, but on page 5, there's a chart that actually documents how many more of these rulings granting emergency relief there have been in the last couple terms. This term, there were 20. That's the most that I've tracked for as long as the court has been deciding these cases as a full court. The average during the first 10 years of Chief Justice Roberts' tenure was about 5.
So I understand that, I'm sorry to be running out of time, yeah. But basically I want to know if there is any kind of an ideological thing going on with the use of the shadow docket.
Yeah, I mean, they've been, so yes, I mean, I think the shadow docket rulings have been far more homogeneously ideological than the merits docket. Just one example, Senator, there were, I believe, 69 rulings on the shadow docket this term, from which at least one justice dissented. There was not a single one where a justice to the right of the Chief Justice joined a justice to the left. These are all breaking down on what we might call the classic ideological grounds.
And we see a lot more of these kinds of orders after the 3 Supreme Court justices, President Trump's justices. I just have one question for Representative Howard. Does Texas have any other laws where enforcement of the law is left to vigilantes and $10,000 in bounty money for them?
Does it have any other law that does that? Is that what you're asking me?
Pardon me?
I'm sorry, were you asking me, does that apply to any other?
Does Texas have any other laws besides this law where they actually let bounty hunters go out and enforce the laws?
This is the only one I'm aware of.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it was a scheme to get around judicial review and to ensure that whether it was ever followed through with or not, there would be this immediate chilling effect, which has occurred, where basically abortions are not being provided because of the fear of the liability. It achieved the purpose, I think, that was intended.
Do you think Texas would ever have a similar law where you can go after people who own guns and let the private sector, let private citizens enforce going after people who own guns and you get $10,000? Do you think Texas would ever enact such a law?
Those kinds of scenarios have been suggested. I have a hard time imagining Texas enacting that particular one.
I think that's a rhetorical question at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.